Ding, ding, ding. Bim, bim, bim. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Pfizer and BioNTech have officially asked the Food and Drug Administration to authorize its coronavirus vaccine for children between the ages of 5 and 11. The FDA is expected to rule on the request by the end of the month, meaning some 28 million children may soon be able to get vaccinated. The number of children infected by COVID has soared in recent months with the spread of the Delta variant. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, children accounted for about a quarter of all infections last month. In other pandemic news, a new study in the journal Pediatrics has found roughly 140,000 children lost a parent or caregiver during the first 16 months of the pandemic. The study found Black, Latinx, and Indigenous children were impacted the most. In international news, COVID deaths in Russia have topped 900 per day this week for the first time since the pandemic began. Venezuela says the International Monetary Fund's not delivered funds that are part of a global program to help countries combat the pandemic because of the ongoing refusal to recognize elected President Nicolas Maduro as the nation's head of state. Venezuela blamed the United States for imposing a veto on Venezuela at the international body. A new draft report from the Senate Judiciary Committees revealed Donald Trump directly asked the Justice Department 9 times for help to overturn the 2020 election. The report sheds new light on the role played by top DOJ official Jeffrey Clark, who Trump considered installing as Attorney General in the final weeks of his presidency because he subverting the election. The report states, quote, Trump's efforts to use DOJ as a means to overturn the election results was part of his interrelated efforts to retain the presidency by any means necessary, unquote. Senate Judiciary Chair Dick Durbin spoke on Thursday.
This president, former President Donald Trump, would have shredded the Constitution to keep his office in the presidency.
In related news, Trump has directed former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, former advisor Steve Bannon, and other 2 aides to ignore subpoenas issued by the House committee investigating the January 6th insurrection. On Thursday, the committee issued new subpoenas targeting the key planners of the so-called Stop the Steal rally. The Senate's approved a short-term deal to increase the debt ceiling to prevent the federal government from defaulting on its debt for the first time ever. The deal gives the federal government enough money to make debt payments until early December. January 6th Newly released body cam footage shows Minneapolis police officers talked about, quote, hunting protesters in the days after the police killing of George Floyd last year. In one video, an officer is heard saying, quote, you guys are out hunting people now. It's just a nice change of tempo.
You guys are out hunting people now. It's just a nice change of tempo. Yep, agreed. These people. Very, very quiet. Let them have it, boys. Let them have it. Get out of here. Right there. Get him, get him, get him. Hit him, hit him.
In another video, officers are seen celebrating after firing rubber bullets at protesters.
Gotcha!
The videos came to light during the trial of Jaleel Stallings, a black man who was recently acquitted of charges of shooting at Minneapolis police officers during the George Floyd protests. Stallings told the jury he was acting in self-defense after men in an unmarked van started shooting at him and others. He learned later the gunmen were police officers firing plastic rounds. The 2021 Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to journalists Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov for, quote, their courageous fight for freedom of expression in the Philippines and Russia. Maria Ressa is the co-founder of investigative outlet Rappler, which has become one of the Philippines' most widely read news sites, despite being the frequent target of attacks by the government of President Rodrigo Duterte. Dmitry Muratov is one of the founders and editor-in-chief of independent Russian newspaper Novaya Gazeta. 6 of the newspaper's reporters have been killed since its creation, including Anna Politkovskaya in 2006, a fierce critic of Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Chechen War. The Wall Street Journal's revealed a small team of U.S. Special Operations Forces and Marines have been secretly operating in Taiwan for at least a year to help train Taiwanese military forces for a possible conflict with China. This comes as the CIA has set up a new mission center focused solely on China. On Thursday, CIA Director William Burns described China as, quote, the most important geopolitical threat facing the United States. 2 school teachers in the disputed region of Kashmir were killed on Thursday by masked gunmen in what's believed to be the 7th deadly attack against civilians within the past week. A militant group known as the Resistance Front claimed responsibility for the killings. Police say suspected militants have killed 27 civilians. Civilians in Kashmir this year, where tensions have been steadily growing. In 2019, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi tightened control of Kashmir, and groups have also accused the Modi government of repression and severe human rights abuses in the region. The family of Argentine journalist Sebastián Moro is demanding an investigation into his mysterious death, which took place in Bolivia during the U.S.-backed coup that overthrew President Evo Morales in November.
So I was chiming in a little bit on these, and then I was just saying that I think Kashmir is this Indian/Pakistani region, if I recall.
2019. Moro was reportedly found semi-unconscious with signs.
This is a good reason to have this going on, actually. See, iron things out before I monologue.
Of physical violence. His mother said, quote, Sebastián was the first journalist in the world to announce and denounce the military coup, and at the same time, he was its first fatal victim. The UN Human Rights Council has voted to shut down a war crimes probe into the U.S.-backed Saudi war in Yemen. A number of European countries wanted the probe to continue for another 2 years, but Saudi Arabia lobbied heavily against the resolution. The Cairo Institute for Human Rights Studies said the vote marked, quote, a blatant attempt by Saudi Arabia and its allies to ensure blanket impunity for themselves after having been linked to war crimes and other grave violations of international law in the country. Human Rights Watch's Jim Fisher had urged the Council to back the war crimes probe.
Failing to renew the mandate when it is still urgently needed would be a stain on the credibility of this Council and a slap in the face to victims. Rather than bowing to pressure by any party to the conflict seeking to evade scrutiny for its own abuses, HRC members should stand with the people of Yemen by renewing the expert mandate at this critical time.
Back in the United States, immigrant justice advocates are denouncing the Biden administration over its plans to turn a private prison in Pennsylvania into a for-profit ICE jail. That's Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The facility would detain over 1,800 people and will be run by the GEO Group, one of the country's largest private prison corporations. A coalition of rights groups is calling on the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights to intervene on behalf of expelled asylum seekers and demand the Biden administration stop using Title 42, the Trump-era policy, which allows the U.S. to expel recently arrived migrants without due process. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says he'll appeal a federal judge's ruling, which temporarily blocked the state's near-complete ban on abortions. The New York Times reports at least 6 clinics resumed performing abortions on Thursday, a day after the ruling. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland has praised the judge's ruling, saying it was a, quote, victory for women in Texas and for the rule of law. A new investigation by Reuters has revealed AT&T, the world's largest communications company, has played a major role creating and funding the far-right One America News Network, or OAN.
I was just talking about them.
Records show
Hopefully I wasn't
AT&T has provided tens of millions of dollars to the network in exchange for the right to air the TV station on AT&T-owned platforms. The founder of OAN, Robert Herron Sr., has even admitted AT&T...
I will tell you, the fact that OAN is on DirecTV, I have DirecTV satellite, and I'm thinking of just going pure internet because of OAN, and also there's a Scientology channel on it, and on the basic, well, it's probably not basic cable, but a basic package, like I don't get the BBC news, but I get these OAN and Scientology and a bunch of advertisement, infomercial kind of channels. It's ridiculous. See, this stuff needs to be regulated. These companies cannot do things without being ridiculous. I think it should be regulated, even if it isn't super important. But when you come down to these political channels, like it's bad enough Fox News is in the basic, but so is CNN and MSNBC. So, okay, a little bit of fair airtime or whatever. They're all bullshit, but, at least they span a spectrum of, or a subspectrum of ideologies. But OAN and a Scientology, literally, it's a cult. It's ridiculous. Okay, let's finish.
He urged him to launch the station because, quote, they wanted a conservative network. OAN's played a leading role amplifying Donald Trump's lies about the 2020 election. And the Biden administration's restoring federal protections for 3 national monuments that were drastically rolled back by Trump to allow for commercial exploitation and extraction. The monuments are Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante in Utah, and the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts off the coast of New England. Over 3.2 million acres will come back under federal protection in Utah alone. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
I think everybody pretty much agrees, regardless of their party, whether they're conservative or liberal or anything like that Democracy Now! Is the best journalism going right, currently. Pretty much everyone agrees on that, even Republicans and Ben Shapiro and everybody. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, Sam Cedar, Kyle Kulinski, Charlie Kirk, Benathon Jonaman, everybody pretty much agrees that it's the best. Okay, so capitalism. All right, I have my own definition of capitalism that I investigated myself. Now, I know a lot of people are going to just have their knee-jerk reactions. And you'd be surprised, because all you more right-wingy kind of conservatives are going to assume, oh, it's whatever he says, it's just some sort of a support of communism, while my actual more leftist acquaintances, friends, colleagues are going to be like, oh, you're a right-winger, what are you saying? So the fact is, as I was saying earlier, your job as a philosopher, of which I am trained in, is to create definitions or improve definitions. Now, I don't think you should just do this wantonly, like, I'm going to create new words and stuff, other than for fun, for fun. When you're serious You should investigate terms, see what they're meant to mean. And when they're coined by a particular philosophical school, as they inevitably are, then you should get the gist. You should try to find a practical conception that matches what they were trying to get at. And you might figure out that definition and it looks bad or it looks good, but you should make it as neutral to some sort of inherent meaning that you can understand, that's more refined, more focused than perhaps just popular conception, which can be pretty confused. So, capitalism, perfect example. So everybody's talking about capital when I'm young, and still, but I mean, telling you my history with this word. So, capitalism, what does it mean? I was wondering when I was young. And at one point I thought, well, it's the idea that if you have money, you deserve more money. And that's pretty good, but no, that didn't really get it. And then I was thinking, okay, well, it's the idea that if you're a capitalist, you ought to make all the decisions. You should, not a king or a queen, not a royalty, but the people that are capitalists should make the major decisions for society. And there's multiple of them. So you could call it an oligarchy, but also, they used to call that democracy. Property people or whatever. But that doesn't really answer it. That also may be a part of it, what people talk about. It's a symptom of this system. But again, I want something more neutral. Now, not something that doesn't lead to some sort of logically necessary negative part or logically necessary positive part. But just besides that, what is the basic idea? When you have an ism, then you're believing, rah, 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 this thing is a big solution. Sometimes people are like, it's the whole solution. But it can also just be, like, my favorite solution for the domain to which it applies. Now, the problem with capitalism being the idea that capitalists should influence the government and the government should be a vessel of theirs to express their perhaps communal view of how things would best be organized from an infrastructural level, it still leaves open the question of, okay, well then what's a capitalist? You just turn the question, Piero, from what is capitalism into what is a capitalist, which sort of shows, okay, wait, what is capital? That's the real question. What is capital? That's what I have. Now, I was going to go look at an Adam Smith quote, but then I decided, to check with Wikipedia and on capital. And because this is a classical definition of capital that I'm going to tell you. Now, the interpretation of what capitalism means will be totally apt. You'll love it. It's perfect. It's a great idea. You'll say, thank you, Piero, for inventing that improvement of my understanding. There's no doubt about, but that's what you're going to say. You're going to tell all your friends that exact quote. I don't even remember it myself exactly, the exact wording, and yet that is what you will tell them. So that's already amazing, right? But this is not my idea. What does capital mean in the first place? Capitalism, yeah, I'm going to say, what is the ism of if capital means what Adam Smith and the rest of the classic Western economists have thought? And by the way, I mean both sides. And the third side, Henry George, they all believe capital has this particular meaning. And it's not capital is money. If that's what you think. Capital is money. No. Okay. So Adam Smith said capital is that part of a man's stock he expects to afford him revenue. Okay, so stock. That means your property, the stuff you own or have control over. And another way of putting it is your wealth. right? If you have a boat that you like to take out in the water and then you just relax and you chill and it's for your enjoyment, that would be wealth. But if you expect to afford a revenue, you put that boat into economic use, then that's capital. So if you start a ferry business and row other people over to the other side, then you've turned that boat into capital. It was wealth, something that afforded you the freedom to do something with it that you wanted to do, or even if you didn't want to do, you owned it and that was your wealth. If you use it to row across the river and pick wild lemons, on the other side of the river, and you row home, presumably, and you squeeze and make lemonade, and the lemonade becomes your wealth. But if you're selling the lemonade, then it becomes capital. If it's just for yourself, it's still wealth, right? So that's the difference. Wealth is all the stuff you have, and capital is what you call it when you use it in your business for economic activity, right? Now, it's worth saying real quick, when we go into this later, we can go into this, but it's worth saying what you need for economic activity is a very simple formula. And there's ways to complicate it, because of course it's going to be complicated by the time you get all of what everyone does. But there is a pretty nice little fundamental, and it's not the only thing. Remember, it's always like graph paper. You can have squares, you can have circles, and you can have logarithmic, you can have different size of squares and all of those things. So there's multiple ways to break things down and decompose them. But the Adam Smith kind of Western economics way is that there's capital, labor, and land. That's what you need to do business or economic productivity. You need capital, which is somebody has to take their farm, and you're going to use that to create Christmas wreaths, right? That you're going to sell, right? Now the barn is capital. The tables, that's capital. That's all your wealth. The land is where you put the stuff, right? So in the case of rowing across the river to get wild lemons, that's the land where the wild lemons can be picked. So it's capital, labor, and land. I think if the lemons are wild, you consider them part of the land. But if the lemons are owned, you planted them, you've made a claim to the land perhaps so that they're yours, even if they're originally wild, and people will let you get away with that. But let's say you planted them and they're your lemon trees, then again, they're either wealth or capital depending on how you use them. Okay, so what is capitalism, if that's what capital means? Capitalism is the belief that you should use your wealth in your business. You should invest your wealth in your business. When you take your money that you make or have, or you take your anything else you've got a printing press, instead of just printing family flyers and crazy stuff for fun, you rent out the printing press to a printer so he can make money, and then you take a percentage off of that, then that would be capital, right? And that's capitalism. When you take your wealth that you could spend it on a weekend in Vegas, and instead you hire an artist to make a graphic for your business, or you put it into your business, that's capitalism. So important to note, if you are a specialist in taking money out of businesses and buying yachts, that's fine. I'm not saying you have to be a capitalist, but that's wealthism. That's not capitalism. That's the philosophy that you should get as much out of that business as you can and make it your personal wealth. Whereas capitalism is taking your personal wealth and putting it into a business. good or bad, how all of that stuff works out certainly doesn't make capitalism automatically good. I think it doesn't make it automatically bad. I think the chips lie where they already lie. But that's what capitalism really is the idea you should take your personal wealth. For example, if you're a baron at the end of the royalty system of feudalism, and invest that wealth in a productive, making a yarn business, putting all those buildings and everything, and you have places for your supplies, and using it to make a productive economic enterprise. That's capitalism. Going the other way is wealthism. It's a different thing. So that's something for you to truly appreciate, and I know you will. I know everybody's going to be totally appreciating that. And in the next couple months, as we get into Thanksgiving and Christmas, probably tell their cousin and their uncle. So that's that. Somebody, what's the difference between, Charlie Singer says, what's the difference between Adam Smith and Friedman, and did Locke deal with economics? Okay, so I'm no economics expert. This is me, gleaning and working for years, wondering what is capitalism, trying to find that out. Adam Smith and Friedman, and Locke did, I believe, also deal with this stuff. But not as much. But Adam Smith is sort of central when I've read. There's always, like, Henry George has a contrary view. Friedman has his own branch, and the Keynesian is, but they're actually all within this structure of what capital means with the capital. And some people emphasize land is just another kind of property, aka what I've called wealth or stock. But I personally believe, like Henry George, that land is definitely its own third category. And even people that call it a kind of property separate it out, as real property or real estate. But the thing is, there's also other important things. Like with capital, I tend to think of capital as the printing press, not the paper that you print things on. But Adam Smith, for example, I think it's on this page. But Adam Smith said there's a couple kinds of capital. One is basically the tools that you use, the printing press, and then the other one is the consumable stuff like the paper and the ink. So yeah, I mean, generally I like conversation. This includes now, but not really necessary. I'm just telling you my discovery of how to understand capitalism. And I mean, you have to admit, when I was younger and I came up with the other ideas, like capitalism is the belief that people that have money should get more, that capital is money, and that's what I mean. That's pretty negative. At least I outgrew that. I outgrew thinking it was just that capital runs the government. These are symptoms of capitalism, perhaps. I mean, maybe they're inevitable, logical situations from capitalism. But I think also it's very interesting that this definition of capital, which is not reverse engineered at all, this is coming from, okay, what do they mean by capital? And then me figuring out, well, a belief in because capital is just a concept. You could say, no, capital is that wealth. No, the definition of saying the word capital means that is just a concept, right? There's other ways to decompose the world and all the things in it. Just like people say, oh, your body is your property. I don't think so. You could say your body isn't property because it's not tradable. You're stuck with it. So there's multiple concepts. So this concept of capital, I just looked up, okay, what did they mean, the people that invented this concept? And then if you say, I believe that concept is inherently positive, the ism of it, what would that mean? And it means creating capital, which comes from wealth. So it means taking your personal wealth, putting it in capital. And frankly, I think it's a good definition. It shows people like Betsy DeVos, when she didn't create, what is it, Avon or something? I forget what the thing is she's linked to, the crazy, stupid grifter money that her family has originally, those people were capitalists because they invested their own wealth to do it. Now she's born into it. Those born into it people are just extracting wealth. They don't have to put their own money back into the business anymore. They just take the dividends out. They're wealthists. You see? They're wealthists. And that's obviously just a fact that now everybody obviously agrees with, which is a great, great thing. I really, I'm happy to hear that. Okay, next thing. Now, culture war. I just wanted to say a little about culture war, but how are you going to talk about it again, dive it in deep or not, and all that stuff, so forget it. I did a search. I tried to find a video that hopefully will be bad enough to watch. Or whatever. I have no idea. I did not watch this. It's only 3 minutes because I figured, I can't just cold watch things entirely. Like, sure, Democracy Now!, since it's the best journalism and everybody agrees with that, sure, fine, that's fair. But on the Hythloday principle, don't want to waste too much of your time. Now, I do like the raw information. So, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to stumble. We're going to actually accidentally be muted. Things like that. That's a bonding thing for us. So that's what we want to do, right? But I don't want to just totally waste your time and watch some stream where I get bored. Because, see, like when I watch something like that, I might multitask. And if it's a little boring and not doing it for me, I might multitask more. And I'll still watch and finish the whole thing. Maybe my attention isn't there. Do I want to make you go through that experience? No. Maybe, actually, if I could figure out how to share the other task and the multitask. But talk about noisy and too much information. That'll probably be hard to do. So just for now, we're assuming that's not possible. But I like the cold watch, the initial thing. I don't want to just vet stuff and watch, because if I'm watching it on my second or third, maybe something that's the kind of thing I know I'm going to watch 4 times, maybe I could watch it on the second time. But anyway, I'm sure you are sensitive and understand what I'm getting at. All right, I'm not muted, right? Okay, good. Okay, so we're going to watch this thing. Now, why did this make the cut? I want to talk about culture war, which is basically, spoiler, it's bullshit, and yet, evidently, it's real. I'll get into that. Well, I could say right now, basically, so I haven't watched this video. It's from Turning Points USA, which is like the college of Republicans, and it's titled "Conservatives Are Winning the Culture War," so it won my search. I have a bunch of other, there's a bunch of other things that I am going to actually watch. Here's one called with Nick Fuentes, Beardson, McNeil, and Baked Alaska. He's free? Oh. I was watching this. Anna Kasparian versus him. Because Ben Shapiro is a big culture warrior. A brief history of the culture wars. This actually looked good so far. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry, I didn't see that one. I'm thinking of this one. This seemed definitely just like a regular YouTuber kind of person. Started to be good. Haven't watched this, but you can kind of see from the, can we call off the culture war? It's probably going to be watching those things around, but this is a short, oh Jesus, where'd it go? There. So I thought this is going to be worthwhile. It's only 3 minutes, conservatives winning the culture war. Now, I've always thought the culture war was bullshit from when I was young. It's just old people going, and things are changing. Of course they're changing. You can try to change them, but they're still going to change also on their own with a lot of momentum. Boulders. Think boulders rolling down hills, waterfalls and rivers. Unstoppable forces, and you can dam it a little, it's still going to pour over, though. It's going to go down. So in the end, it's going to end up in the ocean. Now, it's going where it's going, and the culture war is just so much bullshit. And also, people that are being culture warriors, to hold on to a culture that they have, usually that culture they're saying they have never existed in the first place. You know, like a happy, idyllic America from 1950s. Well, I happen to think America in the 1950s under Ike is one of the best times of America, as long as you were white. There is no totally happy, pretty place in the past. And also, a lot of the people, you know, like you got some long-haired Southern conservative talking about how great America. Well, how about you go back, you know, to the 50s and see how you do, you long hair? You know what I mean? It's just like you, or, oh, I like the old days when there was burly men. Well, you wouldn't fit back then. You're not burly man enough, right? And it's just they don't have it's just like what they're fighting for didn't really exist, and they wouldn't fit in the places that did exist. Right now, are there progressives saying fighting the culture war to make the culture a new kind of culture? I guess if you're going to put it that way. And that's basically why, even though the culture war is bullshit and I don't think it exists, I have to admit that the conservatives have, the reactionaries specifically more than conservatives, but reactionaries, yeah, even on both sides of the aisle, I guess, but obviously mostly conservatives. But the reactionary view that there's a culture war creates a culture war because they declare war. And then suddenly, you're soft on crime. No, you're pro-crime. You are a criminal. You're the devil. This escalation, you know, it only takes one side to declare a war. And if it's on, you know, why are we having a war? Because of idiot pears and peaches, not to mention the idiot apples. And it's like, what? There is what? It becomes the idiot pear war, right? It's the culture war. They're fighting it. What, are you going to not defend yourself? It's like, what do you mean? I don't have a side in this war because I'm just letting the culture go ahead, and then I'll die, and it's somebody else's problem, specifically the people that, you know, that made it or received it and have to do something with it. Except for they're actually going to fight this shit. They're going to storm my Capitol, threaten my democracy, and everything like that. And it's all that the right really has now. Like, I have conservative relatives that I loved talking politics, some of my favorite people, over 30 years, and we would talk politics. And now I don't feel that there is any politics. On the one hand, politically, it's like, oh, it's a bunch of talking points and things like this, and notes, and no surrender, right? If somebody else does something you actually like, you don't give them credit for it. You know, if Obama was policing the border, you don't give him credit for it. Of course, you know that he was doing that, because when Trump polices the border, you go, well, Obama was doing the same thing. So evidently you know, but you just didn't want to give him credit. Obama uses a right-wing, or a rather conservative idea of a nationalized health care that's more like auto insurance than Social Security. Do you give him credit because it's a conservatively approved way of doing that kind of? No. So there's this, and that's the culture war. They're going to attack. Now, the idea that they're winning it is like, no, the desperation is from, it's inevitable. Everybody that is trying to keep their culture intact loses the culture war, and great, because anybody that studies history knows it's bullshit to try to hold on to history. The future is where it's at, man, and you don't think so? Well, you might be an idiot.
You know, obviously, a lot of our individual liberties and freedoms are being taken away. And you hear Charlie talk about it. You have other people like Candace Owens and Daily Wire, and every single one of you on your individual platforms are doing a lot to fight back. And as conservatives, we're coming together to make sure, like, hey, the next generation needs our help too. So When you were creating
These are young
politics,
conservatives.
did you
understand,
realize
obviously.
the impact
I
you'd be
said
able to
that, didn't
make?
I?
And what was
College.
your initial vision when you're talking about the culture war and fighting back against what's going on with the propaganda in pop culture?
Well, my initial vision was to create more than just a show, but a community for conservative young women that could get together and make friends and not feel so alone. I just didn't realize that it was going to become the scale that it is, and having, over 150 subgroups on Facebook all across the country meeting up and doing these events and stuff. I never imagined that. So that was so exciting for me to see all of that grow and everything. And I just realized that young women in the conservative movement are left out a lot of times. And we're also really stereotyped by the right and the left of what a conservative woman is supposed to be, or, like, or dress like, or any of these different things. And so I really wanted cute conservatives to become a place where they could feel like they could be their girly selves, but still love America.
And do you feel like it's evolved ever since you
gee.
started politics, the kind of stuff that you're hearing from cute conservatives? Are they being a little bit more open, stuff they're like, hey, Alex, you've talked about this, but I want a little bit more of that? What are they saying?
Every day, messages. I just ran for school board. I spoke up about, masks, mandates at my school board meeting, all of those different things every single.
Good for them. Good for them, the cute conservatives. Imagine that. Women aren't getting a fair shake in the conservative.
Day. They're getting bolder and bolder. I always say it's Brave season, so they're enjoying Brave season.
I love it. And that's a SZN. Right? That's how we say it.
Yes.
But how are you inspiring people specifically right now, heading towards the end of the year? And then what are some of your goals next year, making sure we can continue to fight back and they have all the tools to fight back and not only fight back,
robbed.
Well, I know next year,
How is this
YBLS
about
last
the
year, our Young Women's Leadership Summit for all young.
These guys were supposed to stand up to the title. I hope it happens still. Conservatives are winning the culture war. How is that part of this video?
Conservative women was massive. It was the biggest one that we'd ever done, and so I have even higher goals for going into next year. So that's going to be very exciting, and doing even bigger things at that. So that's going to be definitely something to look out for.
Well, I know it's always so much fun to watch. I know
Lame.
we talk about it pre-show, and then afterwards, like, I don't follow pop culture that much, but you've been able to hit a specific demographic
Pop
that
culture.
have really needed it. And a lot of young people, we're going to get into that, talking to our different guests here in just a second. But these cute conservatives, it's a massive movement.
Yeah.
Inside of the conservative movement, it's so fun to
They're
watch.
also funny. They're really funny.
So are they trying to say that getting a bunch of cute conservatives is how they're winning the culture war, by having the chicks?
We are so, it's not a serious show. It's very goofy, it's very silly and weird, because I'm super weird. And some of their conservatives do not understand me. They don't understand anything I do. They're like, why are you talking about worms or whatever? And it's fine. If you get it, you get it, and if you don't, you don't.
Yeah, I don't get it. So how is that winning the culture war? Is it because she's a cute conservative? I don't really. Well, I'm glad that was only 3 minutes. I would say it was a win on making sure that particular video was only 3 minutes. Am I right? Am I right? Yes, I'm right. All right, everybody. I'll be back soon, but I do have my brother and sister. One of my sisters and my brother are visiting, and next week, so who knows? Maybe I'll have him on. Oh my God, that would be great. He's a pretty interesting guy. I'm way older. They're way younger. 15 years old when my brother, who's the oldest of my younger siblings. So, who knows? But I'll probably be back before Thanksgiving. But if not, I give you my permission. No copyright. No copyright strikes at all. Nobody's going to get sued for explaining capitalism to their relatives, and I went into that enough that I'm sure you could do that. And as far as the culture war, I think we have to talk about that a little more. I don't think I made myself entirely clear, because it's complicated for you. To me, it's sort of a simple bullshit thing, the culture war. There can't be such a thing. But then people declare them anyway. But it's kind of like an emotional, triggered war. right? Like somebody could create a war on anything. Applesauce, you know, and it's like, what? Yeah, it's fine, love applesauce. You are anti. No, I like applesauce too. No, you don't. You don't like it enough. Do you eat it every day? No, I don't. See, you hate it. They're going to attack you. And then suddenly you got the applesauce war. But it's bullshit, just like an applesauce war. It's like, what the fuck? Culture is changing. It is itself. Trying to hold on to culture in that sense is ridiculous, because the idea of people, I was listening to this, had to drive up to Bangor, was listening to this conservative, or back from Bangor, conservative talk show like I do when I'm in the car, and, well, like I do all the time, but I mean the radio ones. And, you know, they're like, they're beating us down. They're making us into slaves. They're doing everything terrible. And it's like, I don't know. I think it's a bit of extreme moaning. And they're inventing this cultural oppression that they think they have. And at the same time, they're saying, well, we're still in the majority, but soon. You're still in the majority, but you're being oppressed from everywhere. It's just the most ridiculous thing. So obviously the culture war is something we have to go into a little deeper, even though it's total bullshit. Isn't that ironic? It's weird. But when people make up crazy emotional jihads, you have to deal with it. And arguably, it's always from something else. Like, if you really decompose why it's happening, it's something more meaningful. And, you know, is it just people's economic woes and then they are used to projecting it? Do they have a mind virus where they're being controlled by some other entity that's controlling the Trojan horse and idea in their head? Is it aliens? Is it the human nature and all of that? So, but that segues into another topic that we'll talk about, which is people's ability to change their own inclinations and tastes. But we'll do that later. All right, almost an hour, which is my target. Cheers.